640 structures burned in Spokane yesterday. That count came from Cody Rohrbach, the fire chief of Spokane County Fire District 3, at a 6 in the morning briefing today. Many of the buildings were inside the city limits. There are no confirmed deaths. Rohrbach said that based on radio traffic overnight, deaths are anticipated. He also called it probably the largest and most destructive fire in Washington's history. The Old Trails fire started just before noon on the West Plains, west of the city. Wind gusts of 35 to 45 miles an hour pushed it northeast into Riverside State Park. Then it crossed the Spokane River, ran up the bluffs, and burned into neighborhoods on the north side of the city. Mass evacuations were ordered for everything north of Francis Avenue and west of Division Street. 2 more fires started in the same county within hours. Spokane County opened the fairgrounds as a shelter for animals. Horses and livestock can be taken there, and the recreational vehicle grounds were opened as well for families arriving with trailers. The Red Cross has shelters running at the Spokane Convention Center and at Jenkins High School in Chewelah for people leaving South Stevens County. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson declared a statewide state of emergency yesterday morning with a burn ban that runs through the 30th of September. He arrived in Spokane today. Spokane Mayor Lisa Brown declared a separate state of emergency for the city itself. All of this happened on the day the National Weather Service issued its first ever particularly dangerous situation warning for eastern Washington. And the national report that came out this morning shows what that day did to the country. 99 large fires are now burning without containment. Yesterday morning, the number was 84. 18 new large incidents were opened in a single day. The number of people assigned to fires nationally went up by more than 1,100 overnight. That is what a bad day looks like in staffing terms. The 3 Spokane fires are now being managed together by California Interagency Incident Management Team 7. In this morning's national report, they are listed separately. Old Trails stands at 3,500 acres with no containment and 400 structures destroyed. Autumn Lane, 7 miles northwest of the city, is 900 acres with 60 structures destroyed. Fairview, 2 miles northeast, is 981 acres with none. Those figures were compiled overnight. The 640 count from this morning's briefing is newer, and it will keep moving as assessment teams walk the ground. 321 people and 74 engines are assigned to Old Trails alone. Fire behavior on all 3 is listed as extreme, with wind-driven runs, crowning, and spotting. Crowning means the flames moved through the tops of the trees rather than along the ground. That is what let Old Trails cross the Spokane River. A river does not stop a fire moving like that. Burning material lifts on the wind and lands on the far bank. The Mann Grandstaff Veterans Affairs Medical Center was fully evacuated. 27 patients were moved out and are under the care of hospital staff at shelters. Riverside State Park was cleared, and the Dwight Merkel Sports Complex with it. The Washington National Guard was activated for a wildfire in this state for the first time since 2021. The National Weather Service issued a fire warning for Spokane County. That designation is used only when fire is actually burning through an inhabited area under evacuation orders. More than 40,000 customers are without power across Spokane. Some of that is burned line, and some of it is power shut off deliberately so crews can work. An air quality alert is in effect for the county. Overnight, the wind dropped and the fire held at about 3,500 acres instead of growing. That is the one piece of good news out of Spokane this morning. The national tally by state puts yesterday in order. Oregon has 32 large fires burning on 1,755,000 acres. Washington has 17 fires on 285,000 acres. 6 of those 17 started yesterday. Spokane was not the only place in Washington that broke open. 19 miles northwest of Davenport, the Miter Rock Fire started on Spokane tribal land and reached 1,547 acres. 5 structures are gone and evacuations are in effect. 3 miles southeast of Hunters, the Hudspeth Fire reached 4,211 acres with no containment. Homes there are under evacuation too. South of Union Gap on Yakima tribal land, a fire on McCullough Road reached 5,000 acres in its first day. Fire behavior there is listed as extreme. Those 3 did not exist in yesterday's report at all. 2 of them are on tribal land. Miter Rock is on the Spokane Reservation, and the McCullough Road Fire is on the Yakima Reservation. Tribal nations run their own emergency management and their own fire programs, and they set their own evacuation orders. If you have family on either reservation, the tribal notification system is the one to follow, not the county one. The Bradeen Hill Fire southwest of Colville held at 4,212 acres and 7% contained. 3 structures have burned there. The fires that were already burning grew hard. The Sinlahicken Fire west of Tonasket added 9,477 acres and stands at 36,268. It still has no containment. The Little Giant Fire northwest of Leavenworth reached 31,529 acres. Also with none, crowning and long-range spotting are both reported there. The Maudrite Fire southwest of Inchelium is at 40,625 acres and 19% contained. 15 structures have been lost there. The Kaiser Canyon Fire south of Nespelem reached 134,167 acres. Containment there climbed to 38%, which is real progress on the biggest fire in the state. The Ptarmigan Fire northwest of Mazama is at 14,000 acres with no containment. The Washington State Fire Marshal mobilized 13 task forces to hold this. 8 went to Sinlahicken, 5 to the Bradeen Hill Fire near Colville. 3 strike teams went to Kaiser Canyon and Little Giant. 1 more task force was staged in Catitas County with no assignment, held in reserve because nobody knew where the next one would start. By the end of the day, they knew. The largest single number in this morning's report is not in Washington. It is in southeastern Oregon. The Coleman Creek Fire 8 miles east of Juntura added 39,037 acres in one day. It now stands at 251,219 acres. That is about 60 square miles of ground in 24 hours. Containment is still 0 where it has been since the fire started. Evacuations are now in effect there, which is new. Long-range spotting is reported, meaning the fire is throwing burning material far enough ahead to start separate fires. 291 people are assigned to it. For comparison, the Roe Creek complex has more than 2,000. The Roe Creek complex south of Fossil is at 313,439 acres and 55% contained. Command of both zones transferred today to Southwest Area Incident Management Team 2. Federal money has now been approved for firefighting on that complex. That request had been denied once before. The Bench Fire south of Warm Springs climbed to 52% contained on 67,233 acres. Directly across the Deschutes River from Bench, a new fire started yesterday afternoon. The Round Butte Fire began about 3 in the afternoon, 10 miles west of Madras. It is in this morning's report at 700 acres with no containment burning through grass, brush, and juniper. The Jefferson County Sheriff issued all 3 evacuation levels within hours. Level 3 covers the area west of Metolius out to the Deschutes River. The town of Metolius itself is at level 2. Another new fire called Ego started 17 miles northeast of Enterprise and reached 2,000 acres overnight. The Grasshopper Fire north of Sportsman Park is at 26,306 acres and still has no containment. The Hagen Fire east of Pendleton reached 37,645 acres at 8%. The Big Grass Fire near Jordan Valley passed 307,000 acres. The Second Flat Fire near Riley passed 105,000. The Shingle Fire southeast of Mitchell is at 67,416 acres and 10%. The Fox Fire northeast of Huntington is at 76,875 and 42%. The Bald Mountain Fire southeast of Burns now reads 79,000 acres, 6,000 less than yesterday. The fire did not shrink. Crews flew a better mapping run and corrected the perimeter. There is better news in 2 places. The Akawa Butte Fire northeast of Sisters jumped to 85% contained. The Hay Creek complex west of Condon is at 97% and effectively finished. The Bureau of Land Management closed all of its land along both banks of the John Day River. That closure runs from Service Creek north to the Columbia. There is a reason a fire like Old Trails could not be stopped in the afternoon. When gusts pass a certain strength, firefighting aircraft stop flying. Retardant dropped into a 40-mile-an-hour wind does not land where it is aimed. Low flying over rough ground stops being safe. That is built into the warning itself. A particularly dangerous situation forecast tells crews that aircraft may be grounded exactly when they are needed most. So Old Trails ran with ground crews only, in wind that was throwing burning material hundreds of yards ahead of the front. Round Butte, 300 miles to the southwest, went the other way. Crews there had air attack, large air tankers, single-engine air tankers, and helicopters overhead all afternoon. The incident team reports that the aircraft slowed the spread. Both fires started under the same warning on the same afternoon. The second reason is where old trails ran. West Spokane is what fire managers call the wildland-urban interface, where housing is built directly against open grass and timber. In that kind of ground, a house is fuel like anything else. Embers land in gutters, under decks, in dry bark around foundations. The fire does not need to reach a house to set it alight. That is how 640 structures burn in one afternoon, while the main flame front is still somewhere else. None of it surprised the people forecasting it. The warning went out hours before the first smoke, and it said plainly that new fires would be extremely resistant to control. 257 new fires started across the country yesterday. 18 of them grew large enough to be listed by name before the day was out. That last number is the one to hold on to. 18 new large fires in a single day, on a day when the country was already at the top of its preparedness scale. At that level, every national crew and aircraft is already committed somewhere. A new fire does not get whatever it needs. It gets whatever is left, and it waits in a queue behind fires that started earlier. This has happened in this county before, and the comparison is worth making carefully. On the 18th of August 2023, 2 fires started in Spokane County within hours of each other. The Gray Fire near Medical Lake and the Oregon Road Fire near Elk. Together, they burned about 21,000 acres. They destroyed 366 homes and 710 structures in total. That was the worst fire event this county had seen since 1991. The Gray Fire alone destroyed the second most homes of any fire in Washington history. The county assessor put the loss at $166 million in assessed property value. The largest wildfire in state history, the Carlton Complex of 2014, cost $28 million. Now put yesterday next to that. Old Trails burned 3,500 acres, 1/6 of what those 2 fires burned in 2023. And it took 640 structures, almost as many as both of those fires took together. The fire chief who counted the Gray Fire losses 3 years ago is Cody Rohrbach. He is the same man who gave the 640 figure this morning. A level 3 order is not a suggestion to pack. Fire officials say it means leave immediately and do not stop to gather belongings. They are blunt about it because a level 3 order often means there will not be time for a second warning. The evacuation zones around Spokane are not empty country. This is farm and small acreage ground on the edge of a city, and a lot of it has animals on it. County Emergency Management is asking anyone who cannot move animals on their own to call 911 and ask for help. If you are still under a level 2 notice with horses or livestock, move them now. Level 2 is the last point at which moving animals is realistic. A horse trailer takes time to hitch, load, and drive out. At level 3, there is no time left for any of that. If your pet is missing, report it to the county rather than going back for it. Crews are finding animals in the burned area and holding them. If you are heading to a shelter and there is time to do it safely, bring prescription medication and your documents. Extra clothing, blankets, and hygiene supplies help too. Register when you get there. It is how relatives find you and how the county knows who is accounted for. If you do not want to miss these, subscribe. Fire crews on these incidents are working 12-hour shifts, and many have been on the line for 2 weeks. Nearly 28,000 people are assigned to fires across the country right now. The teams that took over Roe Creek today came from the Southwest. The team running the Spokane fires came from California. There is a 15-member team from Australia and New Zealand working the Northwest as well. If you are not evacuating, stay off the roads on the north side of Spokane. Every private car in an evacuation lane is a fire engine that cannot get through. And if you want to help the families who lost houses, wait for the official appeal and send money. Truckloads of donated goods take up the same roads the crews need. The front that did this has moved east and south, and it is still working. Critical conditions hold across the northern Rockies, the northern Great Basin, and the northern plains through this evening. In Montana, west winds of 20 to 30 miles an hour are expected, with gusts to 50 and humidity between 10 and 20%. Across the Great Basin and into the central Rockies, expect gusts to 40 and humidity as low as 4%. 4% is about as dry as air gets over land. Temperatures cooled behind the front, but forecasters say elevated conditions will linger in the inland northwest, and they name southeast Oregon specifically. That is Coleman Creek country. Ahead of the front, the heat is extreme. Lower elevations in California, the central and southern Great Basin, and the southwest are looking at 100 to 120 degrees. Here is the part that matters most for the rest of this summer. The Northwest fire season normally peaks in August. It runs until autumn rain soaks the ground, and reliable rain does not usually arrive until October. Today is the 2nd of August. The national outlook puts above normal potential for significant fires across all of Oregon and Washington through August and through September. No part of either state is forecast at normal. The setup for that goes back to winter. In early April, when snowpack normally reaches its yearly peak, Washington stood at 52% of normal. Oregon stood at 14%. 14% means there was almost nothing up there to melt. The ground began drying in spring instead of midsummer. Those are the conditions the new fires are starting in. 12 miles east of Wisdom in Montana, the Bobcat Lakes fire opened yesterday. 24 miles southwest of Phillipsburg, so did the Moose Fire. The Skillet Fire west of Olney is now under evacuation orders with crowning and wind-driven runs. The Ant Park Fire northeast of White Sulphur Springs more than doubled. In Idaho, a fire called Big Rock started 20 miles east of Idaho Falls with evacuations already in place. The Tartar Fire near Weiser added 3,500 acres. Smoke from the Spokane fires sits heavy over the city and the country east of it. If you are under it, keep windows closed and run air conditioning on recirculate rather than pulling outside air in. Damage assessment teams are working the burned neighborhoods today. Officials have not said how many of the 640 buildings were homes, and that answer usually takes several days. Neighborhoods stay closed until crews confirm there is no live fire and no downed power line inside them. That is the only way to walk 640 burned lots safely. For the people who evacuated, the hardest part of today is the waiting. Here is where the country stands tonight. 99 large fires are burning without containment. 27,934 people are assigned to them with 576 crews and 212 helicopters. 48,000 acres burned nationally yesterday alone. Since the 1st of January, 5,275,000 acres have burned across the country. That is 142% of the 10-year average for this date. Yesterday morning, that figure was 133%. One day moved it 9 points. The number of fires is running at 132% of average as well. 45,800 fires have started nationally this year. Put that against other years on the same date. Last year, the country had burned 3,318,000 acres by the 2nd of August. In 2024, the year Oregon set its state record, the national figure on this date was 4,512,000. Only one year in the past decade was worse than this one right now. In 2022, the country had burned 5,795,000 acres by today's date. The Northwest alone accounts for 2,129,000 of those acres across 52 active incidents. More than 18,000 people are working in that one region. 3 things decide tomorrow. Whether the damage count in Spokane climbs above 640 once assessment teams finish walking the neighborhoods. Whether Coleman Creek adds another 60 square miles with 291 people on a 250,000 acre fire. And whether the 3 new fires that opened in Washington yesterday stay small or turn into next week's problem. Thank you to the crews, the dispatchers, and the neighbors who showed up this week. New numbers come out every morning. We will be back tomorrow to go through them. Take care of each other.